So this is William. He's going to talk about a game.
Yeah. So I was thinking about how to do this talk, and you know, as something more than just come out here and play a video game in front of everybody on the screen. And I will do that shortly. But I thought I would maybe give a little bit of a background on myself and how did I get to this talk and why would I present it today. So I've been doing Java for you know, close to probably 20 years now. And over the course of that career, I've for the most part enjoyed it. I've done some interesting stuff with early, you know, Genie Sun stuff through OSGI on actual embedded VMs, and recently spent quite a bit of time working with the Android framework, you know, the Java written in Java layer, and became extremely frustrated with all the locks, the double locks, and everything that you need if you're going to add services, which I've done working at Samsung. And so that got me looking at alternative languages, and I started looking at Scala, Go, and Clojure. And I was actually quite surprised that very quickly I liked Clojure, and I had recaptured something that I didn't know I'd lost, and that was a passion for programming. And that was doing Clojure at night. And I hadn't realized that I had stopped somewhere along the way loving programming. And I regained it. And so I guess in order to, my thinking was in order to learn a new language best, I would take an existing project and convert it. So a number of years ago, probably close to 10 years ago now, I wrote a lot of games. And so I started converting one, and I'll do more because I like it, to Clojure. And so essentially, let me at least fire that up so I can give you people something to look at. So one of the other things is I grew up I remember bugging my parents for quarters for Space Invaders when it was new. I grew up in the golden age of arcades, and so essentially, I don't have a title screen for it yet, but right, so we've got that, and one of the things that I've really enjoyed with then is actual the REPL. And so now I'm not sure how this will show up on the screen. Well, that's caps. But as soon as I unpause the game now, I've gone into the REPL and I've turned debug on, and now. Actually, it is very, very hard to show. I've added in the hitboxes for all the collision detection. And this has allowed me to do very fast iteration in terms of development. One of the other things that debug mode allows is, you know, I can add the second ship. I can test out, you know, how the little guys appear. In a much easier method. And so I fell in love with actual REPL development, and that wasn't something that I expected. I'd come to this through concurrency. Now I'm into functional programming, REPL development, and I keep a REPL running at work. We're a Java shop, but I keep a REPL running at work all the time. I use it for generating load onto Kafka. I use it for doing quick analysis of logs, and all because of sort of you know, an arcade game and converting it and being frustrated with a double locking system in Android that you guys wouldn't believe, but ask me about it and I'll tell you. So that's pretty much it. This is open sourced. Actually, it's up on GitHub. I probably won't accept any requests to bring in code, but please, you know, feel free if anyone wants to look at it, learn from it, improve it. And that's pretty much it. So, thank you. Any questions?
So, you have now extensive experience in both kind of working, with a REPL environment kind of live at all times, that you can kind of a play
Right.
that you can play in, and without. So, I mean, how do you compare those two? I always have my Lisp environment running at work, so I'm so used to it. I don't understand how people get stuff done without that environment. But you've lived in both worlds, so how do you just adapt to it? How do you compare how you get stuff done?
So the question is how do you compare coming from a world that might have a REPL in a year or two, Java, no REPL for 20 odd years, and now working in REPL, and it's hard to even say this how different it changes the way you think, the way you approach a problem, the way you debug, and now that I'm working with it, I have to keep one running, and I won't do anything other than code that gets checked in Java. Everything else is in Clojure, and it's a frustration at times trying to even explain the change in my approach to programming to the other people in my team, saying, well, no, really, that you've got to try it to believe it. Oh, I don't want to, because it just changes fundamentally, because it really does. You're now the iteration cycle is so fast, right, for testing. I mean, I walked a guy through analyzing some logs, pulling pieces together, and I think I made a believer out of him by showing him what we were doing. We pulled the files, they were line sequences, and I said, okay, now let's pull the JSON out of the end of it, and then let's get go into that and get the elapsed time on the REST call. And then I actually piped it into Incanter and popped up right away, didn't have to do anything, and popped up like a histogram of the lengths of the calls. And yeah, amazing stuff for finally really being able to do. They say software is cheaper when you find the bugs right at the development stage, and this makes it even faster than that. It's almost pre-development because it's part of the thought process while you code. Any other questions?
Who draws the pixels? Is some library or?
So actually, the pixels are interesting. So these are all procedurally generated, and every time you clear a wave or you start the game, you'll have five new different aliens. So a few years ago, there was a fellow named Dave Bollinger, and his page has sort of disappeared from the web, but it's still available through the Wayback Machine. And he did a lot of procedural art with algorithms and software with processing. And he came up with a scheme for generating alien spaceships based upon a random int. So the player ship is integer drop max .integer, and everything else is a random value, and they're generated that way. So the rest of them, I mean, I sort of programmer art. I do it. So the sound effects, there was an open source program created by a guy, and it's basically sort of chiptune kind of NES, Nintendo type stuff, and he gives you a structure for an explosion, and then you can play around with things, structure for a shot or a one-up, coin insert. So those are all just generated. Listen, does it sound sort of good, and then play it through an OpenAL. So this is a binder around OpenGL, OpenAL for the sound. All right, thank you very much.